What's up, squad? This is Brandon from the Batu Sun. Thank you so much for joining me today. So, recent news came out about the escalating production of opium within the Shan region of Myanmar. And this is a very interesting story to me because I really wanted to get ahead of this one. It's indicative of a lot of geopolitical moves that are being made, as well as a reflection of the geopolitical environment prevailing in the world. So, for those that know, Myanmar has been politically unstable for ages and is primarily ran by a junta or a military regime. And they're fighting against resistance forces. And these resistance forces are primarily made up of two forms of opposition. One is the various ethnic groups within the country trying to assert autonomy in their various regions. The other group are Burmese or people from Myanmar that are resistant because they're liberal or they're looking for more democratic reforms in the government. And the reason why this is important because, as we know throughout history, it's very hard to develop a functioning, growing economy when there is no peace. Part of having a growing and functioning economy is they need stability, and nothing is worse for stability than political instability and warfare caused by warfare. So, that being said, only the most essential functions of the economy are going to be done. Things where it's very easy to make money. So, obviously, the day to day of human survival, such as basic food production, is going to be one of them, or basic services. But also something as simple as agriculture, where you plant opium and process and sell them. So, historically speaking, this region, this Shan region, which is going to be in the eastern portion of the country, it's a part of this bigger area, which some people refer to as the Golden Triangle. And this Golden Triangle has historically been a major opium production facility. Of course, people know that opium makes its way in various drugs. Most infamously, you can say, is heroin as the final product. So this Golden Triangle is a region roughly bordering Myanmar, Thailand, Laos, and maybe parts of China as well, where these borders collect. So when Afghanistan was known for poppy processing, especially this part of parts of South Asia when the British ruled there and they had the opium wars with China. This is why drugs are pretty much death sentences in many parts of Asia is because of the havoc that opium production has historically caused in that part of the world. But a lot of that opium production was shut down under the Taliban. So when the Americans invaded Afghanistan, it kind of rose up and it was under a different leadership because of Taliban was taken out of power. Now that Taliban are back in power, one of the big things the Taliban do is they like to crush the opium production. So what you're seeing is this Shan region and Myanmar is starting to boom again. And it said at the height of its production, it produced about 70% of American, the basis of 70% of Americans' heroin supply. This is phenomenal. For those that are familiar with the movie American Gangster with Frank Lucas, they source a lot of drugs or their heroin from this portion of the world. So not only has historically it's been a major producer of opium, but as well as now. So the reason why this is geopolitically important is numerous reasons, but it really coincides with a lot of things. This is China territory right here. Myanmar is one of the great strategic plays for China. I would even go to say that Myanmar is an existential need for China. For those who remember World War II, on both sides of China and Russia, what did Russia or the Soviet Union at the time, what did Soviet Union do and what did China do where they were invaded by an aggressive, more technologically superior force? And for that technology comes with speed and power, of course. For the Soviet Union, it was the Nazi Wehrmacht. For China, it was the Imperial Japanese Army. So the Nazis invaded the Soviet Union and its western region. And what happened was the Soviets drew them in or retreated to the interior, right? Forcing a prolonged battle. They used their geographic depth as a defensive countermeasure. As they sucked the Nazis in, the Nazis became war thin, and they were able to counterattack as well as bog the Nazis down within the Soviet Union through its various bad seasons. Also, it allowed them to avoid defeat, avoid surrender, avoid uh, crucial battles, because that was always the Nazi strategy. Remember, what was their form of warfare? Blitzkrieg, lightning war. The Nazis was all about fast, 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 fast. Getting in, conquering, and being done. They needed speed to win. And that's what the Soviet Union did. They slowed down the Nazis, which allowed for them to eventually wear them down over time with the support of its allies. And the same thing with China. China was able to avoid capitulation to the Japanese Imperial Army because they drew in the Japanese through the Koreas, through Manchuria, and through the eastern regions of China, and they were stretching the much smaller Japanese Imperial Army thin, which prevented Japan from fully conquering China in a timely manner. And they just had to wear them out over the course of the war, but eventually the Japanese surrendered due to the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki by the Americans. But the Chinese were able to avoid defeat and wear down and stretch thin Japanese forces. Now, the way the Chinese were able to subdue this is they still had a supply line, and that supply line ran through Burma. It was called, or Myanmar. These names are interchangeable, but the country goes by Myanmar today. They were able to get supply through what's called the Burma Road and the Letta Road. Both of these were supply routes through Myanmar, which was able to supply the Chinese from its western regions, southwestern regions, so that the Chinese were still able to maintain some type of utility and production while they were being slaughtered and being driven out of their more productive regions of the country where they have built up infrastructure. So this is why Myanmar is so strategic. So China's always going to have a play in this region because they know they are technically a one ocean country. Despite its continental size, China only has real sea access directly through this eastern region. And this eastern region is surrounded by American adjacents or American allies or American partners, whether that be South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, Philippines, etc. And then Vietnam is no great ally. They're kind of indifferent because they haven't had the best relationships with China or the United States, and many people are contesting for their allegiance. So this is why Myanmar is so important to China, especially because I think China is very insecure about India, as they should be very insecure about India. India has kind of got 1,000 heads and 1,000 arms. As soon as India get one head with 1,000 arms, they are going to be a beast to handle. And the Chinese know that. The Chinese definitely know that. So on one side, they have their closest ally, which I always say is Pakistan, but they also have this geostrategic imperative country of Myanmar. So with this heroin production, a lot of this money is going to end up in Chinese hands because, of course, the people that's going to operate this is going to be the triads, as well as some local leadership. But the real scale is going to come from the black market and Chinese influence. So this is going to be a lot of money funneling to them. And this coincides as China had just launched a couple carriers deep into the Pacific, as Japan has reported. China is really trying to grow its influence in the region. And now they just got a whole bunch of black market money, which is going to end up in investments and capital. It's going to end up in banks and infrastructure. And basically to influence a lot of political moves within the region to buy influence. So this is why it's so important, is because Afghanistan is off the market now. Heroin production is booming. And the second thing is China model. When you start to look at their model, of how they operate, I still can't recognize one country, unlike the West, which, for all their faults, I can point to countries that I said they've worked with the West and they have developed they became from a developing economy to a developed economy. And it's not too many other countries in the world you can say that about. And China is a prime example. I think China has no problem surrounding itself just as with lesser advanced, lesser developed, even you can say draconian countries. When you look at countries like North Korea, Pakistan, these totalitarian countries, oppressive countries, which don't they have the world of potential and they can do so many things, but their whole makeup is around oppression, their domestic, maintaining control over their internal population and being a deterrent to external forces. North Korea is North Korea, South Korea for Pakistan is Pakistan and India. And the reason why I say that is because I think China cares two nothings. The fact that Myanmar is so politically unstable and relatively backwards at this point. I think they like it. I just like the old days. What did the Chinese do when surrounded by lesser developed groups? Did they seek to trade and develop? No, they became a vacuum of talent and they put up a wall, the Great Wall, to keep out these more barbaric, what they would deem barbaric people. And that is an unfortunate style of leadership, I believe, because it shows that as the Chinese develop and become the leader of the world, which they are destined to be in the near term because of their economic and industrial power, they're really not going to seek to make the world a more harmonious place in speech or in spirit. And I think that's a fair statement to make. So it basically means that there's going to be more tough times ahead for a country such as Myanmar because China really doesn't care too much about the economic development of its neighbors. So that style of leadership is a throwback and it's coming back. It's not going to be the market liberalization mindset that many had from that Anglo-Dutch heritage that came out of Western Europe. This is going to be hardcore authoritarian Asiatic traditional leadership, where as long as China's winning, as long as there's stability and CPC is at the top of the food chain, China's not going to seek to remedy any of the problems in the region because they have no reason to. As long as the economy is going, the trains keep shipping, and who cares about the quality of life that people have? I think they're happy with that situation because any threat to that is also a threat to the political makeup of the country. And like in any nation, these are people that are going to want to lose their authority. So those are my thoughts. This is an ever evolving change, but because of Myanmar geostrategic position, right out there, right near the Bay of Bengal, right there in that Indo-Pacific region that has become so important, where it's that circle where it's more people that exist inside of it than outside of it in the world. A lot of bad things are happening, and unfortunately, a lot of people like it. So we're going to continue to watch this and see how it evolves and the ramifications it's going to have in the region. So let me know if you have any insights. Love to hear your comment below. Like, share, subscribe if you enjoy the content. Until next time, take care. Back to well.